싫어! 싫어! 싫어!
The man was still begging when Kang Ji-hyun put the bullet through his skull. Blood sprayed across the warehouse floor in a pattern that had become familiar to the dozen men watching. Ji-hyun holstered his weapon with the same casual efficiency he used for everything else, his 6'4" frame barely registering the recoil. The body slumped forward, and he stepped over it without a glance. "Clean this up," he said to Sunung-men, his right-hand man, "and find out who else knew about the shipment. I want names by morning." "Yes, boss." Sunung-men gestured to two younger men who moved immediately to drag the corpse away. Ji-hyun walked out into Seoul's night air, letting the cold wash over him. 16 years running the most profitable criminal empire in South Korea, and killing still felt like the easy part. The hard part was everything that came after, the isolation, the fear in people's eyes, the knowledge that his body made normal human connection impossible. His phone buzzed. Dr. Harrison, the private physician who'd treated all his previous attempts at intimacy. "She's stable," the doctor said without preamble, "but the internal damage is significant. I've recommended reconstructive surgery and at least 6 months of recovery." Woman number 10. The latest failure. Ji-hyun's jaw clenched. "Will she have permanent complications?" "Likely. Scar tissue, chronic pain, possible infertility. Mr. Kang, I have to say this. You cannot keep doing this to women. The risk of fatality increases with each attempt. I pay you to fix them, not lecture me. I'm a doctor, not a miracle worker. Your anatomical situation isn't just extreme, it's dangerous. 12 inches with proportional girth requires months, possibly years of preparation. These women you're bringing me, they're not ready. They can't be ready." Ji-hyun ended the call and stared at Seoul's glittering skyline. Somewhere out there, 10 women carried the scars of his need. 10 women who'd looked at him with desire that turned to terror, fascination that became trauma. He was 34 years old, controlled half of Seoul's underground, commanded fear from men twice his age, and couldn't have sex without hospitalizing his partners. 3 days later, Chrisabel Okonkwo was minutes away from collapsing on a street corner when she saw the classified ad tucked inside a discarded newspaper. Personal assistant position, unusual requirements, compensation package, $300,000 for 3 months plus housing and medical coverage. Discretion mandatory, fearlessness essential, traditional femininity not required. The address was in Gangnam, the kind of building where people like her, street survivors with no papers and empty stomachs, never got past security, but $300,000 meant survival, meant food, meant not having to fight off men with knives just to keep a spot under a bridge. Chrisabel smoothed down her tank top, knowing her combat boots and worn jeans made her look exactly like what she was. She'd lost weight over 3 years on Seoul's streets, her athletic frame now lean with hunger, but her deep brown skin still held strength her body no longer felt. Her natural hair was pulled into a protective style that hadn't been redone in months, but she walked into that lobby like she owned it. The security guard started to wave her away until she slapped the newspaper ad on his desk. "I have an interview, 20th floor." He made a call, listened, then pointed to the elevator with an expression that looked like pity. "Good luck. You'll need it." The elevator ride felt like ascending to judgment. When the doors opened, a weathered man in his 40s waited, tired eyes, ex-military posture, the kind of weariness that came from watching too many people destroy themselves. "Miss Okonkwo?" His English was accented but clear. "I'm Sunung-men. Before you meet the boss, I need to ask, do you know what you're applying for? Personal assistant position?" That's the polite version. Sunung-men studied her with the intensity of someone deciding whether to save her or let her drown. The real version is much darker. "You sure you want to walk through that door?" Chrisabel's stomach was empty, her last meal 2 days ago. She'd fought off 3 men last week just to keep the few possessions she owned. Dark didn't scare her anymore. "I'm sure." Sunung Men sighed, then opened the door to an office that belonged in a different world. Marble, leather, floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooking a city that had chewed her up and spit her out. And standing at those windows was a man who made the expensive space feel small. Kang Ji-hyun turned, and Chrisabel understood immediately why the security guard had pitied her. He wasn't just tall or powerfully built. He radiated the kind of danger that came from absolute power and no accountability. Sharp features, dark eyes that catalogued every detail about her in seconds, an intensity that felt like standing too close to fire. His tailored suit probably cost more than she'd made in her entire life, and he moved with predatory grace that said he'd killed people and would again. "Chrisabel Okonkwo," he said, his voice deep and measured. 28 years old, Nigerian-American. No visa, no legal status in Korea, no family, no resources. 3 years surviving on Seoul's streets. He gestured to a chair. "Sit." She sat because her legs were shaking and pride couldn't hide it. "You saw the compensation package," Ji-hyun continued, settling behind his desk. $300,000, enough to change your life, enough to make you consider things you normally wouldn't. He leaned forward. "So let me be very clear about what you'd be agreeing to." He pulled out a folder, sliding it across the desk. Chrisabel opened it to find medical records, hospital admission forms, photographs that made her stomach turn. 10 women, Ji-hyun said quietly. 10 women who took this position before you. All of them failed. 3 were hospitalized with internal injuries. 2 developed permanent complications. 1 nearly died from hemorrhaging. His dark eyes held hers. "And all of them knew the risks going in, just like you will." Chrisabel forced herself to look at the photographs. Vaginal tearing, cervical bruising, medical terminology that described damage she could barely comprehend. "I don't understand," she said. "What did you do to them?" "I tried to have sex with them." Ji-hyun's jaw clenched. "I have a medical condition, macrophallis. I measure 12 inches in length with proportional girth. The average woman's body cannot accommodate me without extensive preparation and training. These women thought they could handle it. They were wrong." He stood, moving to the window, his broad shoulders rigid. "I've been with prostitutes who specialize in extreme sizes. I've tried progressive dilation training. I've consulted with specialists across 3 countries. The consensus is the same. Most women are anatomically incompatible with me, and the few who might be require months of preparation that usually breaks them psychologically before we ever achieve physical success." Chrisabel stared at the medical records, her mind struggling to process what he was describing. "Then why keep trying?" "Because I'm desperate." The raw honesty in his voice cut through his controlled exterior. "Because I run an empire, command armies, kill without hesitation, and I can't have the one thing every human being deserves, real intimacy. Because every woman I've been with either fears me or gets destroyed trying to prove she doesn't." He turned to face her. "You're different from the others. Your build, your bone structure, wider hips, stronger frame, athletic muscle tone. Your body type suggests you might be capable of accommodating me where others failed. But that's just physical potential. The real question is whether your mind can endure what's required." "What exactly is required?" "Complete submission. Daily training sessions using progressively larger devices to stretch your body beyond its natural capacity, pain that will make you cry, bleed, question every choice that led you here. Months of conditioning your body to accept something it was never designed for." His voice dropped lower. "And through all of that, you'd need to trust me absolutely. Surrender control of your body to my guidance. Let me push you past every limit you think you have." Chrisabel should have run. Should have walked out of that office and accepted her slow death on the streets as preferable to this insanity. But the medical records showed one thing clearly. He'd paid for every woman's treatment, taken care of them even after they failed. He was brutal, but not cruel. "The 10 women," she said. "What happened to them after?" I gave them all full compensation plus medical coverage for life, set up several with new identities in different countries. One still contacts me regularly, convinced if she tries again, she'll succeed. His expression darkened. Another is in psychiatric care, obsessed with being the one who could handle me. Her name is Sophia. What I did to her, even with consent, even trying to be careful, destroyed her mind. And you want to risk doing that to me? I want to know if it's even possible, if there's one woman in the world who can be with me completely without breaking. He moved closer, and Chrisabel had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. I think you might be that woman. Your body, your background, your survival instincts, you're built differently, stronger, maybe strong enough. For $300,000? For $300,000, he confirmed, plus housing, medical coverage, legal documentation to keep you in Korea safely. And if you succeed, if you become the only woman who can accommodate me fully, I'll give you anything you want. Money, power, security, name it. Chrisabel's pulse hammered. This was insane, dangerous, the kind of choice that would either save her or destroy her in ways the streets never could. I need to see proof, she said, that you're actually what you claim. Ji-Hyun's eyebrows rose. You want me to show you? I need to know what I'm agreeing to, not medical records, the reality. For a long moment he just stared at her. Then slowly, deliberately, he reached for his belt. Men, he called without looking away from Chrisabel. Leave us. Lock the door from outside. Sunungmen's voice came from near the door. Boss, are you sure? Now. The door closed. The lock clicked. Ji-Hyun and Chrisabel were alone in that expensive office with its floor-to-ceiling windows and the weight of 10 women's failures hanging between them. He unfastened his pants with clinical efficiency, pushing them down just enough. And Chrisabel's breath stopped. The medical records hadn't lied. If anything, they'd understated the reality. He was enormous, frighteningly so, already partially aroused from their conversation. 12 inches wasn't just a number. It was a weapon, something that would split her in half. This is what 10 women couldn't handle, Ji-Hyun said, his voice rough. This is what sent them to hospitals, therapy, psychiatric care. This is what I'm asking you to train your body to accommodate. Chrisabel should have been terrified, should have been running for that locked door, screaming to be let out. Instead, she felt a dark heat curl low in her belly. Not arousal exactly, but something more dangerous. Challenge. The reckless part of her that had kept her alive on Seoul's streets by never backing down from anything. How long would training take? She heard herself ask. Minimum 2 months before we'd even attempt penetration. 3 to 4 months before you could potentially take me fully. He pulled his pants back up, fastening them with steady hands despite the obvious tension in his body. And that's if your body adapts. If it doesn't, we stop before permanent damage occurs. And if I succeed? Ji-Hyun moved close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his powerful frame. Then you become the most valuable person in my world. Because you'd be giving me something I've never had, the ability to be completely myself with someone who isn't afraid or broken. His hand touched her chin, tilting her face up. So what's it going to be, Chrisabel? Safety and slow death on the streets? Or $300,000 and the risk of becoming woman number 11? Chrisabel looked into his dark eyes and saw desperation matching her own. 2 broken people offering each other impossible solutions. She reached for the pen on his desk and signed the contract without reading another word. When do we start? She asked. Ji-Hyun's smile was sharp and dangerous. Tonight, I need to test your pain tolerance before we begin actual training. He pressed a button on his desk, and a section of the wall slid open, revealing a door Chrisabel hadn't noticed. Through there. Strip down and wait for me. What's through there? Your first lesson in submission. And trust me, Chrisabel, after tonight you'll know exactly what you've agreed to. The room beyond the hidden door looked like a medical facility merged with something darker. Examination table with restraints. Cabinets filled with equipment Chrisabel couldn't identify, soft lighting that couldn't hide the clinical purpose of the space. She stripped down to her underwear, her hands steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. 3 years on the streets had taught her that showing weakness invited predators. Ji-hyun was the most dangerous predator she'd encountered, but the principle remained the same. The door opened, and he entered carrying a metal case. He'd removed his jacket, rolled up his sleeves, and the casual display of muscled forearms made her acutely aware of how much smaller she was. "Lie on the table," he commanded. Chrisabel obeyed, the leather cool against her bare skin. Ji-hyun set down the case and pulled out something that made her stomach clench, a knife with a blade that caught the light like a promise. "What are you doing?" Her voice stayed level. "Testing your pain tolerance. The training will hurt, Chrisabel. A lot. Before we invest months in conditioning your body, I need to know if you can handle discomfort without breaking." He moved the knife closer to her thigh. "This is your last chance to leave. Once I start, we're committed." "Do it!" The blade pressed against her inner thigh, not cutting, just cold pressure that made every nerve ending fire. Ji-hyun dragged it slowly upward, the threat of pain more overwhelming than pain itself. "You're trembling," he observed. "I'm not afraid." "No, you're aroused." His dark eyes studied her face. "Fear and arousal look similar, but I can tell the difference. Your pupils are dilated, your breathing quickened, and between your thighs." He trailed the knife higher. "You're wet." Heat flooded Chrisabel's face. He was right, and she hated it. Hated that danger made her body respond this way, that 3 years of survival had rewired her so thoroughly that threat felt like foreplay. "The women who failed," Ji-hyun continued, setting aside the knife to pull out ice from a small freezer. "They were afraid of pain, afraid of me. You're not. That's why you might succeed." He pressed ice against her heated skin without warning. Chrisabel gasped, her back arching involuntarily. The cold burned worse than fire, sensation overwhelming her system. "Breathe through it," Ji-hyun commanded. "Accept the discomfort. Let it wash over you without fighting." The ice moved higher, circling her most sensitive areas through thin fabric. Chrisabel's hands gripped the table edges, knuckles white, but she didn't ask him to stop. "Good girl," he murmured, and the praise sent warmth through her chest that had nothing to do with physical sensation. "You're already learning." He replaced ice with heat, his bare hand warm and large, cupping her through her underwear. The temperature contrast made her hips buck involuntarily. "Your body is responsive. That will help during training." His fingers found her center, pressing firmly. "Orgasm releases endorphins, makes pain easier to manage. I'm going to condition you to associate penetration with pleasure, even when it hurts." "How?" "Like this." His hand slipped beneath fabric, finding her slick and ready despite the clinical setting. His fingers worked with expert precision, building sensation while his other hand returned to her inner thigh with the knife's dull edge, pleasure and threat in perfect balance. Chrisabel's mind screamed that this was wrong, that she shouldn't be aroused by a dangerous stranger who'd just threatened her with a blade, but her body had its own logic, and Ji-hyun played it like an instrument he'd spent years mastering. "Come for me," he commanded. "Show me how responsive you are." The combination of his skilled touch and the dark intimacy of the moment shattered her control. Chrisabel climaxed with a strangled cry. Her body clenching around his fingers in waves that left her gasping. Ji-hyun withdrew his hand slowly, studying her with satisfaction. "Excellent. Your body responds to dominance naturally. That will make training significantly easier." Before Chrisabel could recover, the door burst open. Sunung Men stood there, expression grim. "Boss, we have a problem. The informant we've been tracking, he's here, demanding to speak with you about the shipment discrepancy." Ji-hyun's demeanor shifted instantly from sensual to lethal. "Bring him to the warehouse. I'll be there in 10 minutes. He looked at Chrisabel. "Get dressed. You're coming with me." "Why?" "Because you need to understand what world you've entered. This isn't just about sex and training. You're working for a criminal organization. If that's going to be a problem, I need to know now." 20 minutes later, Chrisabel stood in a warehouse that smelled of blood and fear. A man was tied to a chair in the center, already beaten, his face swollen. Ji-Hyun's men surrounded him, a dozen hard-faced killers who looked at their boss with fear and respect. Ji-Hyun circled the bound man slowly, his expensive shoes clicking on concrete. Lee Sang-woo, you've been with my organization for 6 years, moved up through the ranks, earned my trust. He stopped in front of the chair. So tell me why you thought stealing from me was a good idea. I didn't. I would never. The man's protest ended in a scream as Ji-Hyun's fist connected with his jaw. Don't lie, I have security footage of you redirecting 3 shipments to your own buyers. Ji-Hyun's voice was calm, almost bored. The only question is whether you were working alone or if there are others I need to find. Please, boss, my family. Your family will be taken care of. I'm not a monster. Ji-Hyun pulled out a gun, checking the chamber with casual efficiency. But theft requires consequences. Otherwise, others get ideas. He turned to Chrisabel, who stood frozen near the door. Come here. Her legs moved automatically, street survival instincts overriding horror. She stopped beside Ji-Hyun, close enough to see tears streaming down the bound man's face. This is the reality of my world, Ji-Hyun said quietly. I hurt people, kill them, build my empire on violence and fear. Can you accept that? Chrisabel looked at the doomed man, then at Ji-Hyun's cold expression. 3 years ago, this would have horrified her. Now, after countless nights fighting to survive, after watching people die over scraps of food, after learning that mercy was a luxury no one could afford. Yes, she said. Ji-Hyun studied her face for a long moment, then nodded. Good, because if you stay with me, you'll see worse than this. He raised the gun and fired. The sound was deafening in the enclosed space. The man slumped forward, dead before the echo faded. Chrisabel didn't flinch. Ji-Hyun holstered his weapon, turning to his men. Clean this up. Find out if he had partners. I want answers by morning. Then to Chrisabel. Let's go. We have training to continue. Back at the building that housed her new apartment and Ji-Hyun's private training room, Chrisabel found herself in a space designed for the conditioning he'd described. Medical equipment, restraints. Graduated dilators arranged by size in a glass case like instruments of transformation. Strip completely this time, Ji-Hyun said, washing his hands at a clinical sink. And lie on the table. We're starting with the first dilator tonight. Chrisabel obeyed, hyper-aware that the hands now pulling on latex gloves had killed a man 30 minutes ago. That awareness should have killed her arousal. Instead, it intensified it. You're still wet, Ji-Hyun observed, positioning himself between her legs. From before or from watching me execute a traitor? I don't know, Chrisabel admitted. Honest answer, I appreciate that. He pulled out the smallest dilator from the case, smooth medical-grade silicone that still looked intimidating. This is the size of an average man. Most women can accommodate this easily. For you, it should be simple. He applied lubricant with clinical efficiency, then positioned the dilator at her entrance. Breathe, relax, let your body open. The first push was pressure, fullness, her muscles instinctively clenching against the intrusion. Ji-Hyun worked it slowly, patiently, his free hand finding her sensitive point to build pleasure alongside discomfort. That's it. Surrender to it. Your body knows what to do. Inch by inch, the dilator slid deeper until it was fully seated. Chrisabel gasped at the sensation. Stretched, filled, overwhelmed. How does it feel? Ji-Hyun asked. Too much. This is the smallest one. We have 7 more progressively larger sizes before we reach something approximating my dimensions. He began moving the dilator in controlled thrusts. And you're going to take every single one. Aren't you? Yes, Chrisabel breathed. Say it properly. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. His eyes darkened with hunger and satisfaction. Good girl. Now I'm going to make you come again. Condition your body to associate this fullness with pleasure. His fingers worked her sensitive point while the dilator moved in steady rhythm. The combination was overwhelming, sensation building to levels that bordered on painful. When the orgasm hit, Chrisabel's body clenched around the dilator so hard she saw stars. Ji-hyun worked her through it, prolonging the climax until she was shaking and oversensitized. Only then did he slowly withdraw the dilator, setting it aside for sterilization. Tomorrow, same time. We'll use the first dilator again, building your comfort level. Once you can take it easily for extended periods, we progress to the second size. He removed his gloves. Questions? Chrisabel's mind was still swimming, but one question surfaced. The 10 women before me, how far did they get? 3 never made it past the first dilator. 4 reached the second or third before their bodies rejected the progression. 2 made it to size 6, halfway to my actual dimensions. His expression was carefully neutral. Hana Park, woman number 9, reached size 7, got closer than anyone. That's when the real damage started. As if summoned by her name, there was a knock on the door. Sunung Men entered looking exhausted. She's here again, Hana, demanding to see you. Ji-hyun's jaw clenched. I've told her. I know what you've told her. She doesn't care. Says if you've got a new woman, she deserves to warn her. Sunung Men's gaze flicked to Chrisabel. Might not be a bad idea, boss. Let Miss Okonkwo hear the truth from someone who lived it. Ji-hyun looked like he wanted to refuse, but finally nodded. 5 minutes. No more. The woman who entered was beautiful in that expensive, fragile way that spoke of good genes and better surgeons. Designer clothes, perfect makeup, the kind of polished appearance that required constant maintenance. But her eyes were hollow, and when she saw Chrisabel on the examination table, her expression twisted into something between pity and rage. You got another one, Hana said, her voice breathy and sharp. How long has it been? A day? Already breaking in your new toy? Hana, Ji-hyun's tone held warning. Don't. She moved closer to Chrisabel, ignoring him. Do you know what he did to me? What trying to be enough for him cost? She pulled up her designer dress without shame, revealing scarring on her inner thighs, faded marks that spoke of medical intervention. 3 hospitalizations. Reconstructive surgery, permanent nerve damage. I can't have children now because of what he put inside me. Everything was consensual, Ji-hyun said tightly. You knew the risks. I knew nothing. I thought I was special. Thought my love and determination would be enough. Thought if I just endured a little more pain, pushed a little harder, I'd be the one who could handle you. Hana's perfect facade cracked, tears streaking through makeup. Instead, I became this. Broken, obsessed, unable to move on because succeeding at this impossible thing became my entire identity. She grabbed Chrisabel's hand, her grip desperate. Run. Before you become me, before your whole life centers around being the woman who can take him, before you lose yourself completely in trying to be his solution. Chrisabel looked at Hana's haunted eyes, at the scars she'd willingly accepted in pursuit of an impossible goal. Then she looked at Ji-hyun, at the desperate need barely concealed beneath his cold exterior. I'm not you, Chrisabel said quietly. I'm stronger. Hana laughed, the sound brittle and breaking. That's what I said. That's what they all said. She released Chrisabel's hand, stepping back. Fine, destroy yourself. But when you're lying in a hospital bed bleeding internally, when you can't walk for weeks because he's torn you apart trying to fit, don't say I didn't warn you. Sunung Men gently escorted her out, her sobs echoing down the hallway. Ji-hyun stared at the closed door, his powerful frame rigid with tension. She's not wrong, you know. I did that to her, damaged her trying to be careful, and I'll probably do it to you too. Then why continue? Because I can't stop. Because the alternative is spending the rest of my life alone, convinced I'm too broken for human connection. He turned to face Chrisabel. Because you're the first woman who didn't look at me with fear after watching me kill someone. The first one who got wet instead of running. The first one who might actually be strong enough. Chrisabel slid off the examination table, her body still aching from the training. I'll succeed where they failed. Why are you so certain? She thought about 3 years on Seoul's streets, about fighting for scraps, about the men she'd hurt just to survive another night. About the numbness that had settled into her bones until she felt nothing at all. Because I have nothing left to lose, Chrisabel said. Hana had a life, an identity, something to go back to. The others probably did too. I have nothing. This is my only chance at something more than slow death in an alley, so I'll endure whatever it takes. I'll reshape my body, surrender my autonomy, let you push me past every limit. Because the alternative is worse than any damage you could do. Ji-hyun moved closer, his hand cupping her face with surprising gentleness. That's the most terrifying thing anyone has ever said to me. Why? Because it means you'll let me destroy you, and I won't be able to stop myself from trying. He kissed her then, hard and claiming, tasting of violence and desperation. Chrisabel kissed back, knowing she was sealing her fate. When they broke apart, Ji-hyun's expression was dark with promise. Tomorrow, we increase the training intensity. 2 sessions per day. I want you progressing faster than any of the others. Can you handle that? Yes, sir. Good. Because in 2 months I want to be inside you, fully, completely, no matter what it takes to get there. 2 weeks passed in a blur of pain, pleasure, and the slow reshaping of Chrisabel's body. Ji-hyun's prediction proved accurate. She progressed faster than any woman before her. The first dilator became comfortable within days. The second took a week of twice daily sessions that left her aching and empty. But she endured. By the end of week 2, she was working with the third dilator, something the size of most well-endowed men. And her body was adapting with frightening efficiency. The training sessions became the center of her existence. Every morning at 6 a.m. and every evening at 8 p.m., she reported to Ji-hyun's private room. He'd work her for hours, stretching, conditioning, building her tolerance while simultaneously making her orgasm until she couldn't distinguish pleasure from pain. You're remarkable, he said during a morning session, the third dilator moving inside her with controlled precision. Hana took 3 months to reach this size. You've done it in 2 weeks. Chrisabel gasped as he angled the device to hit places that made her vision blur. Maybe I'm just more desperate. No, you're built for this. Your body, your mind. His free hand pressed against her lower belly, adding pressure that made the fullness unbearable. Come for me. Show me how well you're adapting. She climaxed with a cry that echoed off the clinical walls, her body surrendering to sensations that should have been impossible. Ji-hyun worked her through it, pushing deeper during her orgasm, taking advantage of her temporary relaxation. When he finally withdrew the dilator, Chrisabel was shaking, her thighs slick with evidence of how thoroughly her body had been conditioned to respond. Tomorrow we start working on duration, Ji-hyun said, cleaning the equipment with methodical care. You need to be able to take this size for extended periods without discomfort. Once you can, we progress to size 4. How many sizes until we match you? 3 more after this. Size 6 is approximately my girth. Size 7 matches my length. His dark eyes held hers. We're almost halfway there. The progress should have excited her. Instead, Chrisabel felt a strange emptiness, like she was becoming a different person with each passing session. The street survivor who'd fought for scraps was disappearing, replaced by someone who measured her worth in inches, accommodated, and orgasms achieved. She was dwelling on this during her afternoon walk through Gangnam when the black van pulled up beside her. 3 men emerged before she could react, one grabbing her arms while another pressed a cloth over her mouth. Chemical smell, world spinning, consciousness slipping. Chrisabel's street training kicked in. She drove her heel down on the first man's instep, twisted out of the second man's grip, and had the third on the ground with his own knife at his throat before they processed what happened. "Who sent you?" she demanded. The man laughed, blood from his broken nose streaming down his face. "The Black Lotus Triad. They want to send Kang Ji-hyun a message about respecting territory boundaries." More men poured from the van. Chrisabel fought with the brutal efficiency of someone who'd survived 3 years on Seoul's streets. No rules, no mercy, just raw survival instinct. She broke bones, drew blood, used the knife with precision born from necessity. When Sunung Men's car screeched to a stop and Ji-hyun emerged with 6 of his men, they found Chrisabel standing over 4 unconscious attackers, covered in their blood, breathing hard. Ji-hyun stared at her for a long moment, then smiled with genuine appreciation. "Well, that's unexpected." "They said Black Lotus Triad," Chrisabel managed, adrenaline still singing through her veins. "Something about territory boundaries." Ji-hyun's smile disappeared, replaced by cold fury. "Get them in the van. All of them. Alive." He looked at Chrisabel. "You're coming. I want you to see what happens to people who threaten what's mine." The warehouse they drove to was different from the one where Ji-hyun had executed the traitor. This one had specialized equipment, restraints, tools designed for extended suffering, soundproofing that spoke of screams no one would hear. The 4 men were chained to posts, slowly regaining consciousness. Ji-hyun circled them like a predator deciding which to kill first. "Black Lotus," he said conversationally. "Chen Wei's organization. We had an agreement about Gangnam distribution. Apparently, he's decided to renegotiate by targeting my personal assistant." "We were just following orders," one man gasped. "I know, which is why you're going to give me every detail about Chen Wei's operation, locations, shipment schedules, personnel." Ji-hyun pulled out a blade that made Chrisabel's stomach clench. "And then I'm going to use you to send Chen Wei a message about what happens when someone touches what belongs to me." What followed was methodical torture. Ji-hyun worked with clinical precision, extracting information while inflicting maximum pain. His men took notes, documenting everything, and Chrisabel watched, unable to look away. She should have been horrified, should have been running from this monster who smiled while causing agony. Instead, she felt heat building between her thighs. Dark arousal that had nothing to do with mercy and everything to do with power. Ji-hyun noticed. Of course he did. When he finally ended the interrogation with 4 quick executions, he moved to Chrisabel, backing her against the warehouse wall. "You're wet," he said, his hand finding the evidence through her jeans. "From watching me torture them." "I don't—" Chrisabel's protest died as his fingers pressed firmly against her center. "Don't lie. Your body tells the truth." His mouth was at her ear, voice dark and intimate. "You liked seeing me like that, powerful, violent, completely in control." "Yes," she admitted, the word torn from somewhere honest and terrible. Ji-hyun's hand slipped beneath her waistband, finding her slick and ready. "The others were afraid of this side of me. They wanted the successful businessman, the controlled dominant during training sessions. But the killer, the torturer, that terrified them." His fingers worked her with expert precision. "But you're different. You understand that violence and desire are the same language." Chrisabel climaxed against the warehouse wall with the smell of blood in the air and the sound of his men disposing of bodies in the background. The wrongness of it made the pleasure sharper, more intense, like crossing a line she could never uncross. "We're the same," Ji-hyun said, still working her through the aftershocks. "Broken by violence, shaped by survival, unable to separate pleasure from pain, power from desire." He withdrew his hand, bringing his fingers to his mouth, tasting her. "That's why you'll succeed where the others failed. Because you're not trying to tame the monster. You're becoming one yourself." That evening, Ji-hyun took her to the velvet cage for the first time since her initial visit, but now she entered as his submissive, not just his employee. Vivian greeted them with a knowing smile. "So she's progressing well, I take it?" "Better than expected," Ji-hyun replied. "I want to show the community what I've found." They moved through the elegant underground club to a private room with one-way glass. People could see in, but Chrisabel and Ji-hyun would see only their reflections. The room was set up for a scene, complete with restraints and the graduated dilators Chrisabel had come to know intimately. "Strip," Ji-hyun commanded. "Completely." Chrisabel obeyed, hyper-aware that people were watching through the glass. The vulnerability should have been humiliating. Instead, it felt like power. Being claimed publicly, displayed as his success where 10 women had failed. Ji-hyun positioned her on the padded bench, securing her wrists and ankles with leather restraints lined in silk. "This is a claiming scene. I'm going to work you with the third dilator in front of the community. Show them that I've finally found someone who can handle what I require." "Why?" "Because rumors have spread. People think I'm cursed, that no woman will ever be compatible with me. I want them to see the truth." His hand stroked her face with surprising tenderness. "And I want you to feel the power of being the only one, the special one, the woman who succeeded." He worked her with the third dilator, his movements calculated for maximum visual impact. Through the glass, Chrisabel knew people were watching. Dominants, submissives, curious observers, all of them witnessing her body accommodate something that should have been impossible. "Look at yourself," Ji-hyun commanded, angling her toward a mirror positioned perfectly. "See how beautiful you are taking this, how strong." Chrisabel watched her own reflection, a woman she barely recognized, deep brown skin glistening with sweat, athletic body stretched and claimed, expression caught between agony and ecstasy. This wasn't the street survivor who'd fought for scraps. This was someone new, someone darker. "Tell them," Ji-hyun said, his voice carrying in the quiet room. "Tell everyone watching what you are." "I'm yours," Chrisabel gasped. "Say it properly." "I'm yours, sir, the only woman who can handle you." His smile was sharp with triumph and possession. "That's right, and soon, you'll prove it completely." He made her climax 3 times while the community watched, each orgasm more intense than the last, conditioning her to crave the exposure, the claiming, the public proof of her success. When the scene ended and he released her from the restraints, Chrisabel's legs wouldn't support her weight. Ji-hyun carried her to the private recovery room, laying her on soft cushions. Vivienne brought water and a warm blanket. "Impressive display. She's progressed remarkably fast." "She's remarkable in every way." Ji-hyun's hand stroked Chrisabel's hair with possessive gentleness. "2 more weeks at this pace, and we'll attempt partial penetration." Chrisabel's eyes flew open. "That soon?" "Your body is ready. The question is whether your mind is." He leaned closer. "Tonight proved something important. You don't just endure the training, you crave it, the pain, the surrender, the transformation into something new." He was right. Chrisabel could feel the change in herself, the way violence aroused her now, the way submission felt like power, the way she measured her worth in Ji-hyun's approving gaze. "What's happening to me?" she whispered. "You're becoming who you were always meant to be. The streets prepared you, but I'm perfecting you." His dark eyes held hers. "The others tried to stay who they were while adapting their bodies. You're smarter. You're letting yourself transform completely." "Is that good or bad?" "It's survival, the highest form." He kissed her forehead. "And it's why you'll succeed where they all failed." Later, as Sunung Men drove them back to the building, the older man caught Chrisabel's eyes in the rearview mirror. "You're different than you were 2 weeks ago," he observed. "I know. The boss, he changes people, reshapes them into what he needs. The others couldn't handle it. They broke trying to stay themselves while becoming his solution." Sunung Men's expression was unreadable. "You're not breaking. You're evolving. I don't know if that's better or worse. Does it matter? Probably not. You've already crossed the point of no return." He pulled up to the building. "Just remember, when you finally become what he needs, you won't be the person who walked into his office 3 weeks ago. That woman is already gone." Chrisabel went up to her apartment alone, stripping off clothes that smelled of sex and violence. She stood in front of the mirror, cataloging the changes. Her body was leaner, more defined from the physical training. Her eyes held a hardness that hadn't been there before, and between her thighs, evidence of how thoroughly she'd been reshaped for one man's need. She should call this off, should recognize the warning signs that she was losing herself in Ji-hyun's orbit, just like Hana had, just like Sophia had. Instead, she found herself planning tomorrow's training session, anticipating the pain, the pleasure, the dark satisfaction of progressing where others had failed. Her phone buzzed with a message from Ji Hyun. "Sleep well. Tomorrow we increase intensity. I want you ready for size 4 by week's end. You're going to make history, Chrisabel. The first woman strong enough to truly handle me." She typed back without hesitation. "I won't disappoint you, sir." His response was immediate. "You couldn't if you tried. You're perfect. Exactly what I've been searching for. Sleep now. You'll need your strength for what's coming." Chrisabel set down the phone and crawled into bed, her body aching in places she'd never known could ache. But beneath the pain was anticipation, hunger for tomorrow's session, craving for Ji Hyun's approval. Sunung Men was right. The woman who'd walked into that office 3 weeks ago was gone. And Chrisabel didn't miss her at all. 6 weeks of brutal training transformed Chrisabel in ways that went beyond physical adaptation. Her body had been systematically reshaped, stretched beyond natural limits through hours of daily conditioning that blurred the line between medical procedure and intimate domination. Size 4 had taken 3 days. Size 5, a week of sessions that left her bleeding and triumphant. Size 6, matching Ji Hyun's girth, required 2 weeks of work so intense that Dr. Nwosu insisted on daily examinations to monitor for permanent damage. "You're progressing at a dangerous pace," the doctor said during one checkup, her expression grave as she reviewed the internal measurements. "Your body is adapting, yes, but the tissue stress is significant. Any faster and we risk permanent injury." "How close am I?" Chrisabel asked. Dr. Nwosu pulled up comparison imaging on her screen. "Size 7 is the final preparation stage. If you can accommodate that comfortably, you can theoretically handle Mr. Kang's full dimensions." She paused. "But Chrisabel, theoretical and actual are very different. The dilators are medical-grade silicone. He's flesh, heat, unpredictable movement. The reality will be more difficult than anything you've trained for. I can handle it." That's what Hana said, right before her 3rd hospitalization. Dr. Nwosu's voice softened. "I'm not trying to discourage you. Your progress is extraordinary. But I need you to understand, achieving full penetration doesn't mean it will be pleasurable or sustainable. It might hurt every single time. You might never adjust completely. Then I'll live with the pain." Dr. Nwosu studied her for a long moment. "You've changed. When you first came to me, there was still light in your eyes. Fear, yes, but also life. Now," she shook her head, "now you look at me the same way Mr. Kang does, like nothing matters except this one impossible goal." She was right. Chrisabel barely recognized herself anymore. The apartment that had seemed like luxury now felt like a holding cell between training sessions. She'd stopped sketching, stopped running with the expat group, stopped building any life outside of Ji Hyun's orbit. Every thought circled back to the training, to progressing, to becoming the woman who could finally give him what no one else could. That evening, Ji Hyun called her to his office instead of the training room. When she arrived, he was standing at the window, tension radiating from his powerful frame. "We have a problem," he said without preamble. "Chen Wei of the Black Lotus Triad, he's escalating. 3 of my distribution centers hit in the past week. 2 of my men killed. He's making a move on Gangnam territory. What are you going to do?" "War. Systematic elimination of his entire organization." Ji Hyun turned to face her, and the cold calculation in his expression should have frightened her. "It will get messy, violent. There will be retaliation attempts. You're a target now, Chrisabel. Anyone who wants to hurt me will come for you." "I can handle myself." "I know. I saw you fight." His lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "But I'm not willing to risk you. Not when we're this close." "Close to what?" "To attempting full penetration. Dr. Nwosu sent me her latest report. You've mastered size 6. She's cleared you to begin working with size 7. He moved closer, his dark eyes burning with need and barely controlled desperation. 2 more weeks, Chrisabel. 2 more weeks and we find out if this is actually possible." The weight of that statement hung between them. 6 weeks of brutal training, 10 women's failures haunting every session, all building toward this single attempt. "What if I can't?" Chrisabel asked. "What if I get this close and my body gives out like the others?" Ji-Hyun's hand cupped her face with surprising gentleness. "Then we stop. Accept that what I need is impossible. And I live with the knowledge that I came closer with you than I ever did with anyone else. That's not good enough." "No, it's not." His thumb traced her lower lip. "Which is why you're going to succeed. Because you're not doing this for money anymore, or survival. You're doing it because you need to prove you're stronger than all of them, that you're the one special enough to handle what they couldn't." He was right, and Chrisabel hated how well he understood her. The training had become an addiction more powerful than any drug, the dark pleasure of progression, the rush of being the only one, the intoxicating validation in his eyes when she achieved what should have been impossible. "I want to try tonight," she said. Ji-Hyun's eyes widened. "You haven't worked with size 7 yet. It's not safe." "I don't care about safe. I care about succeeding." Chrisabel moved closer, her hand finding the evidence of his arousal through expensive fabric. "You've been hard for me since I walked in. You want this as badly as I do, so let's stop pretending we're being careful and just do it." For a long moment, Ji-Hyun stared at her, war between caution and desperate need playing across his features. Finally, need won. "Not here." The training room, full medical equipment standing by, Dr. Nwosu on call. His hand covered hers, pressing her palm against his length. "And if at any point it's too much, you safe word immediately. Non-negotiable." 20 minutes later, Chrisabel was in the training room, stripped and positioned on the examination table that had become more familiar than her own bed. But this time, Ji-Hyun was stripping too, removing his suit with methodical precision that couldn't hide the tremor in his hands. When he stood before her fully naked, Chrisabel's breath caught. The dilators had prepared her intellectually for his size, but seeing it in the flesh was different. 12 inches of thick, rigid length that should have been impossible, a weapon more than anatomy. "Last chance to back out," Ji-Hyun said, his voice rough. "Come here." He moved between her legs, and Chrisabel saw his hands shaking as he applied lubricant, not to himself but to her, working her open with fingers that had killed men and now trembled with the fear of causing harm. "You're already wet," he observed, wonder coloring his tone. "After everything we've done, you're still aroused by this." "I'm aroused by succeeding where 10 women failed." Ji-Hyun worked 3 fingers inside her, scissoring them apart, stretching her with the expertise of 6 weeks' practice. "The preparation matters. Even with all our training, this is going to hurt." "I know." He added a 4th finger, and Chrisabel gasped at the stretch. "Breathe through it. Accept the discomfort. Let your body—" "Stop coaching me and just do it," Chrisabel interrupted. "I'm ready." Ji-Hyun withdrew his fingers, positioning himself at her entrance. The blunt pressure of him against her was overwhelming, nothing like the smooth silicone she'd trained with. Heat, hardness, the slight give of flesh that made it both more and less intimidating. "Look at me," he commanded. Chrisabel met his dark eyes, seeing fear and need and desperate hope all tangled together. "I've never been fully inside anyone," Ji-Hyun said quietly. "Never felt complete acceptance. If you can give me this, if you can take all of me," his voice cracked, "you'll be the only one. Ever." "Then take me," Chrisabel said. "All of me. Now." He pressed forward, and the stretch was immediate, intense, walking the knife's edge between pain and something darker. Chrisabel's hands gripped the table edges, breathing through her teeth as inch by impossible inch, Ji-Hyun worked himself inside. At 4 inches, she started bleeding. At 6, she screamed. At 8, tears streamed down her face and she couldn't tell if they were from agony or dark triumph. "Stop!" Ji-Hyun gasped. "You're bleeding, we need to—" "Don't you dare stop!" Chrisabel ground out. "Keep going, all of it, now!" Something in her tone, command, desperation, iron will, made him obey. He pressed deeper, his own breathing ragged, both of them trembling with the enormity of what they were attempting. At 10 inches, Chrisabel's vision grayed at the edges, At 11, she felt something inside her give way, not breaking but surrendering, her body finally accepting the impossible. And then he was fully seated, all 12 inches, complete penetration. What 10 women had failed to achieve, what years of desperate searching had never found. Ji-hyun made a sound that was half sob, half moan, his powerful frame shaking as he held completely still, buried in her to the hilt. "I'm inside you," he whispered, wonder and disbelief warring in his voice. "Completely, fully. Oh God, Chrisabel." He broke, tears streaming down his face as he held himself motionless, terrified to move and ruin this impossible moment. "You did it. You actually did it. I can feel everything. All of you around all of me. I've never—" Chrisabel wrapped her legs around his waist, despite the agony, locking him in place. "Move. Show me what it feels like when you don't have to hold back." "I'll hurt you worse." "You're already hurting me. At least make it worth it." Ji-hyun pulled back slowly, then thrust forward with controlled force. The sensation was overwhelming, fullness beyond anything the dilators had prepared her for. He moved again, establishing a rhythm, and Chrisabel felt her body responding despite the pain, pleasure building in dark waves. "You're so tight," Ji-hyun gasped. "Even prepared, even trained, you're gripping me like—" He thrust deeper, hitting places inside her that had never been touched. "I'm not going to last. 6 weeks of wanting this, of watching you train, and now—" He climaxed with a roar, his body shuddering as he released inside her, finally experiencing complete sexual fulfillment for the first time in his adult life. The warmth of him flooding her core, the pulsing of his length, the absolute possession of being filled beyond capacity. It triggered Chrisabel's own orgasm, her body clenching around him in waves that bordered on painful. When it was over, they stayed locked together, both shaking, both processing what had just happened. "I need to pull out," Ji-hyun said finally. "You're still bleeding. We need Dr. Nwosu." "Not yet." Chrisabel's grip tightened. "Stay inside me, just for another minute. Let me feel what it's like to be the only one." Ji-hyun's expression softened, and he leaned down to kiss her with a tenderness that seemed foreign to his usual dominance. "You're the only one, the only woman in the world who can take me. Do you understand what that means?" Chrisabel understood perfectly. In that moment, with him still buried inside her, she felt the shift in power dynamics that had been building for weeks. He needed her now, not just wanted, needed, because she'd given him something irreplaceable, something he could never find with anyone else. "It means I own you," she said quietly. Ji-hyun's eyes widened at the boldness of the statement, but he didn't argue, couldn't argue, because they both knew it was true. When he finally withdrew, Chrisabel bit back a cry at the emptiness, the soreness, the trickle of blood and other fluids that proved what they'd accomplished. Ji-hyun called Dr. Nwosu immediately, his voice steady despite the emotional upheaval. The doctor arrived within 20 minutes, examining Chrisabel with professional efficiency. "Minor tearing," Dr. Nwosu announced. "Nothing that requires stitches, but you'll need to abstain from penetration for at least a week, maybe 2. "No," Chrisabel said. Both Ji-hyun and Dr. Nwosu stared at her. "You need time to heal," the doctor insisted. "I need to prove this wasn't a one-time fluke, that I can do it again." Chrisabel met Ji-hyun's gaze. 3 days. Give me 3 days to heal. Then we try again." "Chrisabel," Ji-hyun started. "You got what you needed tonight. Now I need what I need. Proof that I'm not just lucky, that I'm actually the one who can handle you repeatedly, sustainably." Her voice was steel wrapped in softness. 3 days. Then I want you inside me again." Something shifted in Ji-hyun's expression. Recognition, maybe, that the power dynamic had already changed. 3 days, he agreed. After Dr. Nwosu left with strict care instructions, Ji-hyun carried Chrisabel to the recovery room, laying her on soft cushions. He cleaned her gently, tended her wounds, showed her a careful attention that seemed at odds with his usual dominance. "You're different," he observed. "So are you. You gave me something I thought was impossible. I don't know how to—" He stopped, struggling with unfamiliar vulnerability. "Thank you doesn't seem adequate." Chrisabel studied him. This powerful, feared man who'd killed without hesitation, now trembling with gratitude because she'd let him inside her completely. The power imbalance was intoxicating. "You can thank me by giving me what I want," she said. "Which is?" "Everything. Your empire, your resources, your complete trust." Her hand traced his jaw. "I proved I can handle your body. Now let me prove I can handle your world." Ji-hyun should have refused, should have recognized the dangerous shift happening. Instead, he kissed her palm and said, "Whatever you want, it's yours." Outside the recovery room, Sunung-men stood with Vivienne, both having witnessed the aftermath of the successful penetration. "She did it," Vivienne said, wonder in her voice. "After 10 failures. She actually did it." "That's not what worries me." Sunung-men's expression was grave. "Did you see her eyes? She's not the victim anymore. She's realized what she has, the only thing the boss has ever truly needed. And she's going to use it. Is that so bad? Maybe she deserves some power after what she endured. Maybe, or maybe we just watched the birth of something more dangerous than the boss ever was." Sunung-men headed toward the elevator. Either way, everything changes now. The woman who walked into that office 6 weeks ago would never have demanded access to his empire. But this one, she knows exactly what she's worth. "Do you think she'll destroy him?" "I think she'll reshape him. And I don't know if that's better or worse." Back in the recovery room, Chrisabel lay in Ji-hyun's arms, feeling the shift in their dynamic with crystal clarity. She'd set out to survive, to exchange her body for security. But somewhere between the pain and the training and the dark pleasure, she'd discovered something more intoxicating than safety: power. She was the only woman who could give Kang Ji-hyun what he needed. That made her irreplaceable, invaluable, and if she played this correctly, unstoppable. Tomorrow she'd start learning his business operations. Next week she'd meet his key lieutenants. Within months, she'd be more than his submissive or his assistant. She'd be his equal, his partner, his weakness and his strength. The woman who'd survived Seoul's streets by fighting had learned a more effective weapon, becoming indispensable to the most dangerous man in the city. And this was only the beginning. 3 days of forced rest felt like imprisonment. Chrisabel's body healed under Dr. Nwosu's care, the minor tearing closing, the soreness fading to manageable discomfort. But the hunger didn't fade. If anything, it intensified. She'd tasted complete power over Ji-hyun in that moment of full penetration, seen his vulnerability, his desperate need, and now she wanted more. On the 4th day, she arrived at his office unannounced. Ji-hyun was in a meeting with 3 of his lieutenants, discussing territory disputes and distribution channels. They all fell silent when she entered. "Out," Ji-hyun said to his men without looking away from Chrisabel. "Boss, we're in the middle of—" one started. "I said out." They left, casting curious glances at the woman who could interrupt their boss's business without consequences. When the door closed, Ji-hyun stood, moving toward Chrisabel with barely controlled restraint. "Dr. Nwosu said a week minimum," he said. "Dr. Nwosu underestimates me." Chrisabel locked the door, then moved to his desk, sitting on the edge. "I'm healed enough, and I know you've been desperate." Ji-hyun's hands clenched into fists. 3 days without being able to touch you has been hell. Knowing what it feels like to be inside you completely and not being able to— "Then take me. Right here. Right now." He moved like a predator unleashed, his hands gripping her thighs, spreading her legs. "You're sure? If we damage you further—" "I'm sure. Show me what it's like when you don't have to hold back." What followed was fast, brutal claiming. Ji-hyun drove into her with force that made her gasp, but her body had been conditioned for this, reshaped for exactly this purpose. The pain was there, sharp and overwhelming, but beneath it was dark pleasure, the satisfaction of giving him what no one else could. "You're so tight," Ji-hyun groaned, his control fracturing. "Even after everything, you still grip me like—" He thrust deeper, hitting that place inside her that made her vision blur. "I can't last. 3 days of wanting this and—" He climaxed with a strangled sound, his body shuddering as he released inside her. Chrisabel wrapped her legs around his waist, holding him deep, feeling the warmth flood her core. "Again," she demanded when his breathing slowed. "I want to see how many times you can do it." Ji-hyun's eyes widened. "Chrisabel, you just healed, we shouldn't—" "I don't care about should. I care about can." Her hand found his face, forcing him to meet her gaze. "You've spent 6 weeks training my body. Now I'm going to use it, as many times as I want, whenever I want. Do you understand?" Something in her tone, command rather than submission, made Ji-hyun's spent length twitch with renewed interest. "Yes. Yes, what?" A pause, heavy with implication. Then, quietly, "Yes, ma'am." The power shift was subtle but absolute. Chrisabel smiled, feeling the change settle into her bones. "Good. Now let's discuss what I want in exchange for giving you this. Anything. I want in. Your business operations, your meetings, your decisions. I want to know everything about how this empire runs." She clenched her internal muscles around him deliberately, making him gasp. "And I want your men to understand that disrespecting me is the same as disrespecting you." Ji-hyun's expression shifted, calculation mixing with desire. "That's dangerous. My world isn't just business negotiations and money, it's violence, betrayal, constant threats. I know, I've seen you kill, it made me wet." Chrisabel leaned closer. "I'm not asking to be protected from your world, I'm asking to be part of it." For a long moment, Ji-hyun studied her face. Then slowly, he nodded. "I'll call a meeting with my key lieutenants. Tomorrow. You'll be introduced as my partner in all matters. Not just your submissive? No. My equal in business, my superior in bed." He pulled out slowly, making them both gasp. "Because that's what you've become, isn't it? The woman who owns me." Chrisabel cleaned herself with tissues from his desk, watching him struggle to regain composure. "Get used to it. This is our dynamic now." The next day's meeting was held in a secure conference room beneath one of Ji-hyun's legitimate businesses. 8 men sat around a table, his most trusted lieutenants, the ones who ran his empire's various operations. They all stood when Ji-hyun entered with Chrisabel at his side. "Gentlemen," Ji-hyun said, his hand possessive at the small of Chrisabel's back. "This is Chrisabel Okonkwo. As of today, she has full access to all operations and decision-making authority equal to mine." The shock was palpable. One man, Park Min-ho, who ran the Gangnam distribution network, couldn't hide his disdain. "Boss, with respect, she's been here 6 weeks. We don't know her, can't trust her with— Are you questioning my judgment?" Ji-hyun's voice went cold. "No, but—" Park glanced at Chrisabel with barely concealed contempt. "She's your plaything. That doesn't qualify her to—" The words died as Ji-hyun's hand closed around Park's throat, slamming him against the wall with brutal efficiency. "Say that again. I want to make sure I heard correctly." Park gasped for air, his face reddening. "Boss, I didn't mean—" "You called her my plaything." Ji-hyun's grip tightened. "As if she's disposable, replaceable. Would you like me to demonstrate what happens to disposable people?" Chrisabel watched the display of violence with clinical interest. This was a test, not just for Park, but for her. Ji-hyun was showing his men that she was under his protection, but protection suggested weakness, dependency. She needed something more. "Let him go," Chrisabel said quietly. Ji-hyun's eyes flicked to her, questioning. She held his gaze steadily until he released Park, who collapsed, gasping. Chrisabel moved to stand over the fallen man. "You're right that I haven't earned your trust yet. 6 weeks isn't long enough to prove loyalty or capability." She crouched down to his level. "But here's what you need to understand. I'm not here because I'm sleeping with the boss. I'm here because I can give him something no one else can. That makes me valuable beyond any of you." She stood, addressing the room. "I know you all think I'm just another woman who'll wash out like the others, but those women failed because they tried to endure him. I succeeded because I conquered him. There's a difference." Park struggled to his feet, anger and humiliation warring on his face. "You arrogant—" "Enough!" Ji-hyun cut him off. "Chrisabel will be attending all future meetings. She'll have access to financial records, operational details, everything. Anyone who has a problem with that can voice it now." Silence. No one was stupid enough to challenge Ji-hyun directly. "Good. Now let's discuss the Black Lotus situation. Chen Wei has been getting bolder. I want comprehensive retaliation plans by end of week." The meeting continued, and Chrisabel absorbed everything: territory maps, financial flows, personnel hierarchies. She asked sharp questions that demonstrated understanding of criminal logistics, drawing on 3 years of street survival that had taught her how underground economies worked. By the end, several of the lieutenants were looking at her with grudging respect rather than contempt, all except Park, whose resentment simmered visibly. After the meeting, as they drove back to Ji-hyun's building, Chrisabel said, "Park Min-ho is going to be a problem. I'll talk to him, make him understand. Talking won't fix this. He sees me as a threat to his position. Men like that don't respond to words." She turned to Ji-hyun. "Kill him." Ji-hyun's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "What?" "You heard me. Park disrespected me in front of the others. If you let that stand, it sets a precedent. But if you make an example of him—" Chrisabel's voice was calm, rational. "Then everyone understands that I'm untouchable. Chrisabel, he's been with me for 8 years. He's loyal, effective. He called me your plaything. That's not loyalty. That's insubordination." She placed her hand on his thigh. "You said I have decision-making authority equal to yours. So I'm making a decision. Park Min-ho dies." For a long moment, Ji-hyun drove in silence. Then he pulled over, turning to face her. "Do you understand what you're asking? You're not just requesting protection. You're demanding I kill a valuable lieutenant to prove a point." "Yes." "Why?" "Because I need your men to fear me the way they fear you. Respect born from fear is the only kind that lasts in your world." Chrisabel's gaze was steady. "And because I want to see if you'll choose me over someone who's served you for years." Ji-hyun stared at her, and Chrisabel watched the war play out across his features. Logic versus need, business sense versus desperate desire to prove his commitment to the only woman who could satisfy him completely. Finally, he pulled out his phone and called Sunung Men. "Park Min-ho has become a liability. Handle it. Tonight." He ended the call and looked at Chrisabel. "Satisfied?" "Very." She leaned over to kiss him, tasting the bitter edge of the choice she'd forced him to make. "Take me home. I want to reward you for making the right decision." That night, while Park Min-ho was being eliminated, Chrisabel took control in the bedroom for the first time. She pushed Ji-hyun onto his back, straddling him with confidence born from knowing exactly what her body could do. "My turn to be in charge," she said, positioning him at her entrance. "Chrisabel—" "Quiet. You get to dominate during training sessions. But in bed, I decide the pace." She sank down slowly, taking all 12 inches with a control that came from weeks of conditioning. The fullness was still overwhelming, still bordered on painful, but she'd learned to crave it. Ji-hyun's hands gripped her hips, trying to guide the rhythm. But Chrisabel pinned his wrists above his head. "Don't move. Don't touch. Just feel what I'm giving you." She rode him with deliberate slowness, clenching her internal muscles, using every technique he'd taught her during training to maximize his pleasure while controlling her own. Ji-hyun struggled beneath her, his powerful body straining against her hold, desperate to take control. "Please," he gasped. "Let me—" "No. You've had your way for 6 weeks. Now you're going to learn what it feels like to be at someone else's mercy." She leaned down to bite his neck, hard enough to leave marks. "Beg me to let you come." "Chrisabel." "Beg, like I've begged during training." The proud, dangerous man who ran Seoul's underworld trembled beneath her. Please, please let me come. I need— What do you need? You. Only you. Always you. The words broke from him raw and honest. I'm yours, completely. Please. Chrisabel increased her pace, grinding down hard, taking him so deep she felt him hit her cervix. Come for me. Fill me up. Show me who owns who now. Ji-hyun climaxed with a roar, his body arching beneath hers, releasing inside her with desperate intensity. Chrisabel continued moving through his orgasm, chasing her own pleasure, using his oversensitive length to trigger her release. When they both collapsed, sweaty and spent, Ji-hyun pulled her close with shaking hands. You're dangerous, he whispered against her hair. I learned from the best. His phone buzzed. A text from Sunung Men. It's done. Clean. Chrisabel read the message over his shoulder, feeling nothing. No guilt, no horror, just cold satisfaction that Park would never disrespect her again. Does it bother you? Ji-hyun asked. That you just ordered a man's death? Should it? I don't know. It bothered me the first time. Now— He trailed off. Now it's just business. Just survival. Chrisabel traced patterns on his chest. The streets taught me that hesitation gets you killed. Your world operates on the same principle. You've changed so much. 6 weeks ago you were desperate, hungry, fighting just to survive another day. Now you're ordering executions and taking control in bed like you were born to it. Maybe I was. Maybe everything before this was just preparation. She looked up at him. Do you regret it? Reshaping me into this? Ji-hyun was quiet for a long moment. I should, but I don't. Because you're perfect now. Everything I needed and didn't know I needed. Then stop questioning it. Accept that we're both monsters who found each other. They fell asleep tangled together, and Chrisabel dreamed of power, of building an empire, of becoming something more than just the woman who could handle Kang Ji-hyun. 3 days later, Hana Park showed up at Chrisabel's apartment building. The doorman called up asking if she wanted the visitor allowed entry. Send her up, Chrisabel said. When Hana stepped out of the elevator, she looked worse than before. Thinner, her expensive clothes hanging loose, makeup unable to hide the hollows beneath her eyes. You did it, Hana said without preamble. I heard the rumors. You actually took him, fully, successfully. Yes. Hana laughed, the sound brittle and breaking. I tried for 3 months, hospitalized 3 times, and you did it in 6 weeks. Do you know how that makes me feel? I don't particularly care. Of course you don't. Because you're not human anymore. Hana's eyes were wild, desperate. I came to warn you before, told you to run, but you didn't listen. And now look at you. I heard what happened to Park Min-ho. You had him killed for insulting you. He disrespected me. There were consequences. He was a person, a human being with a family, and you had him murdered like he was nothing. Hana's voice rose. That's not strength, that's monstrosity. Chrisabel studied her calmly. Is there a point to this visit? The point is, you've become exactly what I was afraid of. You didn't just survive Ji-hyun, you became him. Worse than him, maybe, because he at least has some conscience buried under all that violence. You? You feel nothing. I feel plenty. I just don't let it control me. That's what monsters tell themselves. Hana moved closer, searching Chrisabel's face for some sign of the woman who'd sat in that office 6 weeks ago. Where is she? The desperate street survivor who just needed money. What did you do with her? I killed her. She was weak, afraid, powerless. I'm better now. Hana's expression crumpled. Then you're lost. And eventually Ji-hyun will see it too. He'll realize he created something worse than loneliness, a woman who uses his need as a weapon. And when that happens, he'll destroy you the same way he destroyed me. No, he won't. Because unlike you, I make him complete. I don't just endure him, I satisfy him. Chrisabel opened her door. Now leave, and don't come back. Next time I won't be this merciful. Hana hesitated, then whispered, I used to be like you. Convinced I was different, special, stronger than the others. That confidence is what breaks you in the end. When you finally look in the mirror and don't recognize yourself, that's when you'll understand what I tried to warn you about." She left, and Chrisabel closed the door, locking it firmly. She walked to the mirror, studying her reflection. Deep brown skin, athletic body reshaped by weeks of brutal training, eyes that held cold calculation instead of desperate hunger. Hannah was right. She didn't recognize this woman, and Chrisabel smiled because that was exactly the point. The weak died, the strong adapted. And she'd done more than adapt. She'd evolved into something new, something dangerous, something perfectly suited to survive and thrive in Ji-Hyun's dark world. "Good," she said to her reflection. "Monsters survive." 2 weeks after Park Min-ho's execution, Chrisabel sat in on her 5th business meeting. Ji-Hyun's remaining lieutenants had learned quickly she wasn't decoration or a passing fascination. She asked cutting questions, identified weaknesses in their operations, and suggested improvements that increased profits by 15%. But respect born from competence wasn't enough. Chrisabel wanted more. "The Black Lotus retaliation," she said, interrupting a lieutenant's report on distribution routes. "It's too slow. Chen Wei interprets patience as weakness." The room fell silent. Kim Tae-sung, who'd taken over Park's territory, spoke carefully. "Boss has always preferred calculated responses over, 'I'm not questioning the boss's methods. I'm suggesting we accelerate the timeline.'" Chrisabel pulled up a map on the conference screen. "Chen Wei's primary warehouse is here. Minimal security on weekends. We hit it this Saturday, eliminate his supply chain in one night." "That's aggressive," Sunung-men observed. "Could trigger all-out war." "We're already at war. Chen Wei made that clear when he tried to kidnap me." Chrisabel's gaze swept the room. "The question is whether we respond with fear or force." Ji-Hyun had been silent throughout, watching her command his men's attention. Now he leaned forward. "And who would lead this operation?" "I would." The shock was immediate. Several men started speaking at once, protests about her inexperience, the danger, the precedent it would set. Ji-Hyun silenced them with a raised hand. "You want to lead an armed assault on a rival gang's warehouse?" "Yes, with Sunung men as backup and tactical support." Chrisabel turned to the older man. "You've seen me fight. You know I can handle myself." "Against street thugs trying to kidnap you, yes. Against trained gang members in a coordinated attack?" Sunung men's expression was grave. "That's different." "Then train me. I have 4 days before Saturday." She looked at Ji-Hyun. "Unless you think I'm not capable?" The challenge was deliberate, public. Ji-Hyun could either support her or undermine her authority in front of his men. After a long moment, he smiled, sharp and dangerous. "Sunung men, you have 4 days to prepare her. Full tactical training, weapons familiarization, everything she needs." His dark eyes held Chrisabel's. "But if this goes wrong?" "If you get hurt, I won't. I'm not like the others. I don't break." The meeting continued, but the power dynamic had shifted again. By the end, it was clear to everyone that Chrisabel wasn't just Ji-Hyun's partner in bed. She was positioning herself as his equal in violence. That night, in the training room, the dynamic shifted in a different way. "Strip," Chrisabel commanded. Ji-Hyun raised an eyebrow. "We already had our session this morning." "This isn't about my training, it's about yours." She moved to the cabinet where equipment was stored, pulling out items Ji-Hyun had never seen her touch before. "Lie on the table, face down." "Chrisabel, that wasn't a request." The authority in her voice made something flicker in Ji-Hyun's eyes. Surprise, maybe, or arousal. Slowly, he stripped and positioned himself as commanded. Chrisabel secured his wrists and ankles with the same leather restraints he'd used on her countless times. "You've spent 6 weeks dominating my body, reshaping it for your pleasure. Tonight we reverse that." She trailed her hands down his back, feeling the powerful muscles tense beneath her touch. "You're used to control, to being the dominant one, but I think there's a part of you that craves surrender, that wants to let go of all that power and just feel." "I don't—" Ji-Hyun's protest died as her hand wrapped around his length from behind, stroking firmly. Don't lie. Your body tells the truth. She worked him expertly, building his arousal while he lay helpless, restrained. The women before me, they submitted because you demanded it, but you've never submitted to anyone, have you? No. Then tonight, you learn what I've been experiencing for 6 weeks. She released him, and he heard her preparing something. When the cool lubricant touched his entrance, Ji-Hyun's entire body went rigid. Chrisabel, what are you? Teaching you about trust, about vulnerability, about what it feels like to surrender completely. Her finger pressed inside, and Ji-Hyun gasped at the foreign intrusion. Breathe through it. Accept the discomfort. Sound familiar? She worked him slowly, carefully, using techniques he'd taught her, building sensation, stretching gradually, conditioning his body to accept what felt impossible. By the time she pressed a second finger inside, Ji-Hyun was trembling, his powerful frame shaking with unfamiliar vulnerability. "You're so tight," Chrisabel murmured, echoing his own words from their training sessions. "But your body will adapt, just like mine did." She felt him start to resist, muscles clenching against the intrusion. "Don't fight it. Let your body open for me. I can't. This is—" Ji-Hyun's voice cracked. "You can. You will. Because I'm commanding it." She added a third finger, and the sound Ji-Hyun made was broken, desperate. "That's it. Surrender to me. Let me have this part of you." When she judged him ready, Chrisabel positioned herself with the strap-on she'd selected, medical grade, sizable but not cruel, designed for exactly this kind of reversal. She pressed against his entrance slowly, giving him time to adjust. "Breathe," she commanded. "Relax. Trust me not to hurt you." Inch by inch, she worked the device inside until it was fully seated. Ji-Hyun's hands were clenched into fists, his face buried in the cushioned table. And when Chrisabel looked closely, she saw tears streaming down his face. "How does it feel?" she asked, holding still. "Too much. Too full. I can't—" "This is what you did to me. Every single day for 6 weeks. Now you understand." She began moving, slow, controlled thrusts that made Ji-Hyun gasp and shudder. This is what complete vulnerability feels like, what surrender means. She worked him methodically, and despite the initial resistance, Ji-Hyun's body began responding. His breathing changed, tension shifting from resistance to something darker. "You're getting hard again," Chrisabel observed, reaching around to stroke him. "Your body likes this, even when your mind fights it. Interesting." "Please," Ji-Hyun's voice was wrecked. "Please what? Please stop, please continue, use your words." "I don't know. I can't think." "It's too much." "Good. Stop thinking. Just feel." She increased her pace, finding a rhythm that made him moan helplessly. "Come for me. Show me what it looks like when Seoul's most dangerous man surrenders completely." The combination of penetration and her hand working his length pushed Ji-Hyun over the edge. He climaxed with a broken sob, his powerful body shaking with the intensity of an orgasm that came from complete submission rather than dominance. Chrisabel worked him through it, prolonging the pleasure until he was gasping, oversensitized, utterly wrecked. Only then did she slowly withdraw, releasing his restraints. Ji-Hyun collapsed onto the table, trembling. Chrisabel moved to stand where he could see her face. "Now you understand," she said quietly. "This is the power I have over you. The only woman who can take you completely is also the only woman who can reduce you to this. Do you understand what that means?" Ji-Hyun couldn't speak, could only nod. "It means we're equals now, in every way." She stroked his hair gently. "And it means when I ask for something, you're going to give it to me." "Anything," Ji-Hyun whispered. Chrisabel pulled out papers she'd prepared earlier, legal documents transferring 50% ownership of his empire to her name. "Sign these." Ji-Hyun's eyes widened as he read through the contracts. "You want half my organization?" "I want what I've earned. I gave you my body, my pain, my complete transformation. You're going to give me power in return." She placed a pen in his shaking hand. "Sign, or I walk away, and you never feel complete again." The threat was absolute. They both knew he couldn't find another woman like her, couldn't replicate what she gave him. She'd become as essential as breathing. Ji-hyun signed each page with a hand that trembled from more than exertion. "Good boy," Chrisabel said, and the phrase that had been used on her so many times sounded different in her mouth. Possessive, triumphant, absolute. She helped him to the recovery area, cleaning him gently, showing him the same careful attention he'd shown her. But the dynamic had permanently shifted. They both felt it. "What happens now?" Ji-hyun asked when he could finally speak. "Now I become what I was always meant to be. Your partner, your equal, your co-ruler." Chrisabel kissed him softly. "And tomorrow? We announce it to your lieutenants." The next morning's emergency meeting saw every key member of Ji-hyun's organization gathered. When Chrisabel walked in wearing designer clothes that screamed power and money, carrying herself like she owned the room, several men exchanged nervous glances. Ji-hyun stood at the head of the table. Effective immediately, Chrisabel Okonkwo is co-owner of all operations. She has signing authority equal to mine, decision-making power across all territories, and complete access to financial resources. The shock was palpable. Kim Tae-sung found his voice first. "Boss, with respect, this is not up for discussion." Ji-hyun's tone brooked no argument. "The contracts are signed and filed. This organization now has 2 leaders. Anyone who can't accept that can leave, with their lives, if they choose wisely." Sunung-men studied Chrisabel with an expression somewhere between respect and concern. "This is unprecedented." "So am I," Chrisabel replied. She pulled up financial reports on the conference screen. "I've been reviewing our operations. There are inefficiencies across distribution. Money laundering has too many intermediaries, and our protection rackets are leaving money on the table." She highlighted specific numbers. "I'm implementing changes, starting with the Black Lotus raid this Saturday." "You're still planning to lead that personally?" Sunung-men asked. "Yes, and I need 3 of you with combat experience to accompany me." Chrisabel's gaze swept the room. "Volunteers?" After a tense moment, 3 men raised their hands, hardened criminals who'd killed before. Now taking orders from a woman who'd been a street survivor 7 weeks ago. The next 4 days were brutal. Sunung-men trained Chrisabel in weapons, tactics, close-quarters combat. She absorbed everything with the same focus she'd brought to the physical training, her body already conditioned for violence from 3 years on the streets. Saturday night, they hit Chenwei's warehouse with surgical precision. Chrisabel led from the front, surprising the Black Lotus guards with her speed and ruthlessness. When one guard raised his weapon, she shot him without hesitation. Center mass, clean kill, no wasted movement. By the time they finished, 5 Black Lotus members were dead, the warehouse was burning, and Chrisabel stood in the flames with blood on her hands and satisfaction in her eyes. "Boss?" one of her team said. The title carrying new weight. "Chenwei will retaliate hard." "Let him try." Chrisabel holstered her weapon. "We'll be ready." They returned to Ji-hyun's building triumphant. When Chrisabel walked into his office, still carrying the scent of smoke and violence, she found him pacing. "You're hurt," he said, seeing blood on her sleeve. "Not mine." She moved to him, pulling him into a kiss that tasted of gunpowder and victory. "We did it. Sent Chenwei a message he won't forget." "You could have died." "But I didn't, because I'm stronger than you thought." She pushed him against the desk, her hand finding his length through expensive fabric. "And now I need you to remind me what it feels like to be filled completely." They had sex on his desk with the lights of Seoul spread beneath them, and this time there was no hesitation. No careful preparation. Chrisabel's body had been thoroughly conditioned, reshaped for exactly this. She could take all of him now with dark pleasure instead of screaming pain. "You're mine," Ji-hyun gasped as he moved inside her. "My perfect match, my equal in every way." "No," Chrisabel corrected, clenching around him deliberately. You're mine, and the sooner you accept that, the happier we'll both be. The truth of it settled between them. The woman who could handle his impossible size now wielded that power like a weapon, and Ji-hyun was helpless against it. 2 weeks later, word spread through Seoul's underworld. Kang Ji-hyun had a partner now, a black woman who'd gone from nothing to co-ruling his empire in 8 weeks. Some called it unprecedented, others called it insane. Chen Wei called it an opportunity. His retaliation came swift and brutal, an attempted hit on one of their distribution centers, designed to kill both Ji-hyun and Chrisabel. But they'd anticipated it, and when Chen Wei's men arrived, they found a trap waiting. The firefight was short and vicious. When it ended, 6 Black Lotus members lay dead, and one, Chen Wei's nephew, knelt before Chrisabel with his hands zip-tied behind his back. "Please," the young man begged. "I was just following orders. I have a family." So did Park Min-ho. Chrisabel's voice was ice. "Tell your uncle that this territory belongs to us. Anyone who challenges that dies." She raised her gun, and Ji-hyun's men watched to see if she'd actually do it, if the woman who'd led the warehouse raid would take this final step. Chrisabel pulled the trigger. The body slumped forward, and she holstered her weapon with steady hands. "Clean this up. Send the body back to Chen Wei with my message carved into the chest. Queens don't negotiate." Ji-hyun watched from where he stood, and the expression on his face was complex. Pride, fear, arousal, recognition that he'd created something more dangerous than himself. That night, back in their private space, he asked the question that had been building. "Do you feel anything? When you kill?" "Relief. That it's not me dying." Chrisabel met his gaze steadily. "Does that make me a monster?" "It makes you a survivor, like me." "No, not like you. You feel guilt buried under your violence. I don't." She moved closer. "I've become something you didn't anticipate, the woman who can handle you physically and match you morally. Does that scare you?" "Terrifies me." "Good. It should." She kissed him softly. "Because I'm not finished yet. We're going to build an empire that makes what you had before look like amateur hour. And anyone who stands in our way ends up like Chen Wei's nephew." Ji-hyun pulled her close, and Chrisabel felt his arousal pressing against her. Even terrified, even recognizing the monster she'd become, he still needed her desperately. That was the ultimate power, not just being the only woman who could physically accommodate him, but being the only person who understood his darkness completely, because she'd become just as dark. "Take me to bed," Chrisabel commanded. "I want to feel you surrender again." And Seoul's most dangerous man obeyed without question. Because the woman who'd walked into his office 8 weeks ago, desperate and hungry, had transformed into something far more terrifying than he'd ever been, a queen who'd built her throne on his need and watered it with blood. 3 months after killing Chen Wei's nephew, Chrisabel had reshaped Ji-hyun's empire into something more efficient and brutal. The Black Lotus Triad had sued for peace after losing 15 men to operations she personally led. 2 smaller gangs had been absorbed entirely, their territories folded into an organization that now controlled 70% of Seoul's underground, and everyone knew who really ran it. The Queen of Gangnam, they called her in whispers. Some said it with respect, others with fear. All of them knew better than to challenge her directly. Chrisabel sat in what had been Ji-hyun's private office, now renovated with her touches, her aesthetic, her absolute authority. Across from her, a nervous businessman shifted in his expensive suit. "Miss Okonkwo, the investment opportunity I'm proposing is money laundering," Chrisabel interrupted, dressed up with corporate language and legitimate storefronts, but fundamentally a way to clean our cash flow. She pulled up financial projections. "Your proposal moves 20 million annually. I can triple that." The businessman blinked. "How?" "By creating something that appears philanthropic. A tech startup focused on helping street survivors, job training, housing assistance, rehabilitation programs." Her smile was sharp. "We hire people with cash, pay them through legitimate channels, and suddenly dirty money becomes clean payroll expenses. That's actually brilliant. I know. Chrisabel stood, signaling the meeting's end. I'll have contracts drawn up. The company launches next month. You'll be listed as founder and CEO. I'll be the silent investor. Any questions? Just one. The name? Chrisabel thought of the woman she'd been 3 months ago. Desperate, hungry, fighting for survival on these same streets. Second Chance Initiative. Because everyone deserves one. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd gotten her second chance by becoming a monster. After the businessman left, Ji-hyun entered from the adjoining office. In 3 months, their relationship had evolved into something that defied easy categorization. He was still dangerous, still powerful, still ran operations with brutal efficiency. But in private, in their intimate moments, the dynamic had permanently shifted. The money laundering operation, he asked, will be operational within weeks. We'll move 50 million annually once fully scaled. Chrisabel moved to him, her hand finding the collar hidden beneath his dress shirt, a simple leather band she'd commissioned after their reversal scene. He wore it always now, concealed from the world, but a constant reminder of who truly owned him. People are starting to talk, Ji-hyun said, saying I've been compromised, that I let a woman take over my empire. Let me handle the people who talk. Chrisabel's fingers traced the collar. Anyone specific I should be concerned about? Lee Dong-wook runs our Itaewon operations, made comments about my judgment being clouded by... He paused, the words clearly bitter. By what's between your legs? Chrisabel's expression went cold. Set up a meeting, tomorrow. I want to look him in the eye when I destroy him. The next day, Lee Dong-wook arrived at their offices with confidence that suggested he didn't understand the danger he was in. He was older than most of Ji-hyun's lieutenants, had been with the organization for 12 years, and clearly believed that seniority granted him immunity. He learned otherwise quickly. Mr. Lee, Chrisabel said, not rising from behind her desk, I understand you have concerns about my leadership. With respect, Miss Okonkwo, you've been here 3 months. Some of us have built this organization over decades, and yet I've increased profits by 35%, eliminated our primary rival, and established operations in territories you couldn't penetrate in 12 years. Chrisabel pulled up comparative data. So when you question my judgment, what you're really questioning is basic mathematics. Lee's face reddened. I'm questioning whether the boss is thinking with his head or his... He didn't get to finish. Chrisabel moved with the speed Sunung-men had drilled into her, crossing the desk and driving a knife through Lee's hand, pinning it to the wooden surface. Lee screamed. Chrisabel leaned close, her voice deadly quiet. That was for disrespecting me. This, she twisted the knife, is for disrespecting him. And this, another twist, is to remind you that I've killed 5 men personally in the past 3 months, and I don't lose sleep over any of them. She pulled the knife free, and Lee collapsed, cradling his ruined hand. You're out, effective immediately. Sunung-men will escort you to collect your severance package, which is your life if you leave Seoul within 24 hours. If you stay, if you talk, if you even think about retaliation, I'll make what just happened seem merciful. Understood? Lee nodded frantically, stumbling out when Sunung-men arrived to remove him. After he left, Chrisabel cleaned the knife methodically. Ji-hyun had watched the entire exchange from the doorway. You're getting comfortable with violence, he observed. I was always comfortable with it. I just had to remember. Chrisabel returned the knife to the concealed sheath at her thigh. 3 years on the streets, I hurt people to survive. This is just a different context. The others, the 10 who failed, none of them could have done that. Because they were trying to endure you while staying who they were, I understood from the beginning that survival requires transformation. She moved to him, her hand finding his collar again. You remade my body, I let you, but in the process, I remade everything else. Ji-hyun pulled her close, and she felt his arousal pressing against her. Sometimes I don't know if I love you or fear you. Both, always both. Chrisabel kissed him deeply. That's what makes this work. Their intimacy had evolved too. The careful preparation, the hours of stretching, the medical supervision, all of it had been abandoned once Chrisabel's body fully adapted. Now they could have sex spontaneously, violently, anywhere and everywhere. Her body had been so thoroughly conditioned that she could take his full length with dark pleasure instead of screaming pain. They made love against the office window overlooking Seoul, and Chrisabel watched the city lights while Ji-hyun moved inside her, both of them knowing that the power she wielded over him now extended far beyond the bedroom. That evening, Chrisabel received an unexpected visitor at the apartment building. The doorman called up, voice uncertain. "Miss Okonkwo, there's a woman here. Says her name is Sophia. She's insisting she needs to see you." Sophia, woman number 7, the one who'd become addicted to pain, ended up in psychiatric care, obsessed with succeeding where she'd failed. "Send her up." The woman who emerged from the elevator bore little resemblance to the photographs in Ji-hyun's files. Sophia had been beautiful once, athletic, confident, full of life. Now she was gaunt, her eyes hollow, her expensive clothes hanging loose on a frame that had wasted from obsession. "I heard about you," Sophia said, her voice shaky. "The woman who succeeded, who can take him completely, I had to see for myself. You've seen me, now leave." "Wait." Sophia moved closer, desperate. "I need to know. How did you do it? What's your secret? I tried for 4 months, made it to size 6, and my body just rejected the progression. But 3 months and you're taking him regularly. How?" Chrisabel studied the broken woman before her, recognizing what Sophia had become, a cautionary tale, a ghost of failure haunting the halls. "I did it by becoming someone else entirely," Chrisabel said. "You tried to stay Sophia while accommodating him. I stopped being Chrisabel and became whatever was necessary to survive." "So you lost yourself?" "No, I found myself. The real version that was always underneath the civilized pretense." Chrisabel poured herself a drink. "You're here for a reason. What do you really want?" Sophia's composure cracked. "I want another chance. I want to try again. Now that I've had therapy, now that I understand the psychological components." "No. Please, I've spent a year in treatment, working through the addiction, the obsession. I'm better now. You could nothing. Your body rejected the training for a reason. Trying again would only destroy what's left of you." Chrisabel moved closer. "But I might have another use for you." Sophia's eyes widened with desperate hope. "Anything. I'll do anything to be close to this world again. Information gathering. You're educated, well-connected, move in circles where people talk freely. I need eyes and ears in places I can't reach." Chrisabel outlined her proposal. Sophia would attend social events, cultivate relationships with the wives and girlfriends of rival organizations, and report back anything useful. "You're using me as a spy," Sophia said. "I'm giving you purpose. Something beyond your obsession with taking Ji-hyun's length. The question is whether you're strong enough to accept it." Sophia was silent for a long moment, then she nodded. "I'll do it. Not for him, for you. Because you succeeded where I failed, and maybe being useful to you is the closest I'll ever get to that success." "Good answer." Chrisabel handed her a phone. "This is your direct line to me. No contact with Ji-hyun, no trying to insert yourself into his life. You work for me now. Understood?" "Understood." After Sophia left, Chrisabel added her to a growing network of informants, women who'd failed with Ji-hyun, but found purpose serving the woman who'd succeeded. 3 of the 10 previous women now worked for her in various capacities, their broken obsessions redirected into useful channels. Hana refused, of course. Hana still clung to the delusion that she'd been special, that her failure was somehow more noble than success. But the others, they understood that proximity to power was better than isolation and failure. The Second Chance initiative launched a month later with significant media coverage. Chrisabel gave interviews about her own survival on Seoul's streets. carefully crafted to be inspirational while concealing the violence that had actually saved her. The company hired 50 people in its first month, all paid through legitimate channels that cleaned millions in cash. Behind the scenes, it served another purpose: recruiting. The desperate street survivors who came looking for help often had skills useful to a criminal organization. Chrisabel identified the ones with potential and offered them choices: legitimate rehabilitation or lucrative work in the shadows. Many chose shadows. Desperation made people pragmatic. 6 months after signing the contracts that made her co-owner, Chrisabel stood before Ji-Hyun's full assembly of lieutenants, now her lieutenants too, and outlined expansion plans. "We're moving into digital operations," she announced. "Cryptocurrency money laundering, dark web marketplaces, ransomware distribution. The traditional criminal enterprise is dying. We adapt or become obsolete." Several of the older men exchanged skeptical glances. Kim Tae-sung spoke carefully. "Boss, those operations require technical expertise we don't have. Which is why I'm hiring it." Chrisabel pulled up profiles of 3 hackers she'd already recruited. "They start next week. Anyone who can't adapt to the new direction should consider retirement." After the meeting, Sunung-men lingered. "You're reshaping this organization faster than the boss ever did." "Because I'm not constrained by tradition or loyalty to the old ways. I see what works and implement it." Chrisabel studied him. "Do you have a problem with my methods?" "Problem? No? Concern?" "Yes." Sunung-men's weathered face was grave. "I've been with the boss for 16 years, watched him build this empire through calculated violence and strategic patience. You've been here 6 months and you're already more dangerous than he ever was. Is that a compliment or a warning?" "Both." He moved closer. "The boss? He has lines he won't cross, principles buried under all that violence. You don't. I've watched you kill without hesitation, manipulate without guilt, rebuild broken women into useful tools. You don't see people, you see assets or obstacles. And I don't know if that makes you the perfect partner for him or the thing that will ultimately destroy him." Sunung-men's expression was unreadable. "Just remember, the higher you climb, the harder you fall, and you've made a lot of enemies in 6 months. Let them come. I'll destroy them like all the others." That night, Chrisabel introduced Ji-Hyun to another aspect of their evolving dynamic. She'd commissioned a custom collar for him, expensive leather with platinum fittings, elegant enough to be mistaken for a fashion accessory, but unmistakably a symbol of ownership. "Wear this," she said, fastening it around his neck. "Not just in private anymore. I want people to see it." Ji-Hyun stared at his reflection, at the visible evidence that he belonged to her. "This will start rumors." "Good. Let them talk about how Seoul's most dangerous man wears his woman's collar. Let them wonder what it means." Chrisabel's hand traced the leather. "You gave me your empire. I'm just marking my territory." She pushed him onto the bed, straddling him with the confidence of someone who knew exactly what power she wielded. "Now show me how much you love being owned." Their intimacy had become more complex. Sometimes she dominated completely, sometimes he was allowed control, sometimes they fought for supremacy and both won. But always, always, there was the understanding that she could walk away and leave him incomplete. That was the ultimate weapon, not just being the only woman who could physically accommodate him, but being the only person who understood his darkness completely because she'd become darker. After, as they lay tangled together, Ji-Hyun voiced the question that had been building. "Do you love me, or am I just a means to power?" Chrisabel considered lying, offering comfortable reassurance. Instead, she chose truth. "I love what you made possible, the transformation from desperate survivor to queen, the power, the resources, the empire we're building." She traced patterns on his chest. "Do I love you as a person? I don't know. I'm not sure I'm capable of that kind of love anymore. The woman who could feel that died somewhere between the streets and your training room." "That's what I thought." Ji-Hyun's voice was quiet, resigned. "But I choose you. Every day. Not because I have to, but because we're perfectly matched in our monstrosity. That's worth more than love. Is it? It's honest. Love is performance. This, she gestured between them, this is real. Two broken people who found completion in mutual destruction. Ji-hyun pulled her closer, and Chrisabel felt his acceptance of that truth. They'd both known from the beginning that this relationship was built on need rather than affection. Acknowledging it openly just removed the pretense. Somewhere in the city, Hana Park sat alone in her expensive apartment, drinking herself into oblivion while thinking about the woman who'd succeeded where she'd failed. Somewhere else, Sophia attended a gallery opening, cultivating relationships with the wives of rival gang members, gathering intelligence for her new queen. And in offices across Seoul, men who'd underestimated Chrisabel Okonkwo started making plans, plots to exploit her as a weakness, to use her against Ji-hyun, to prove that a woman couldn't truly rule the underworld. They would all learn the same lesson eventually. The woman who'd endured being reshaped for one man's impossible need had learned to reshape reality itself, and she had no intention of stopping until Seoul's entire criminal empire bore her mark. Chrisabel Okonkwo stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of her private office, formerly Ji-hyun's, now unmistakably hers, and surveyed Seoul's glittering skyline. 31 years old, and she controlled more of this city's underworld than anyone had in 2 decades. The Second Chance Initiative had grown into a billion-dollar enterprise, laundering money so efficiently that authorities praised it as a model rehabilitation program. Her digital operations moved $200 million annually through cryptocurrency channels that couldn't be traced, and her network of informants, built from broken women, desperate survivors, and people who'd learned that serving her was safer than opposing her, reached into every corner of Seoul's elite society. "Boss," Sunung-men said from the doorway. Now in his late 40s, he'd aged visibly under the weight of serving 2 masters who'd become more dangerous than anyone anticipated. "The courier from Busan is here. Says he has information about the Lee family's expansion plans." "Send him in." The man who entered was young, nervous, carrying a briefcase like it contained explosives. In Chrisabel's world, information was more volatile than bombs. "Miss Okonkwo," he stammered, unable to meet her eyes. "The documents you requested, everything about the Lee family's operations, their suppliers, their distribution networks. Leave them. Take your payment from Sunung-men on your way out." Chrisabel didn't turn from the window. "And remember, if this information reaches anyone else, I'll know, and I don't forgive betrayal." After he scurried out, Chrisabel reviewed the documents with satisfaction. The Lee family had been expanding into territories she considered hers. This intelligence would allow her to dismantle their operations before they became a real threat. Ji-hyun entered without knocking, one of the few privileges he still maintained. At 37, he was still devastatingly powerful, still feared across Seoul, but the collar around his neck, now worn openly, told everyone who truly held his leash. "The Lees are moving faster than we thought," he said, reading over her shoulder. "They've already established distribution in Hongdae. Then we remove them, systematically, publicly." Chrisabel turned to face him. "I want everyone to see what happens when people challenge my territory." "Our territory," Ji-hyun corrected gently. "No, mine. You gave me half 3 years ago. I've built it into something beyond what you had before. The question is whether you can accept that I've surpassed you." The words would have destroyed their relationship once. Now they just settled into familiar patterns. Ji-hyun's hand moved to his collar, the unconscious gesture he made when acknowledging her dominance. "I accept it," he said quietly. "I've accepted it for 2 years now." That night, they attended a gala where Seoul's elite gathered: politicians, business leaders, criminals hiding behind legitimate facades. Chrisabel wore a dress that cost more than she'd made in 3 years on the streets, moved through the crowd with the confidence of someone who owned the room. People watched her with fascination and fear. the woman who'd gone from nothing to co-ruling Seoul's underworld. The one who'd succeeded where 10 others failed, the queen who wore her victory like armor. Across the room, she spotted movement that made her instincts flare. A man watching Ji-hyun too intently, his hand moving toward his jacket in a way that suggested concealed weapons. Chrisabel moved with the speed Sunung-men had drilled into her 3 years ago, crossing the distance before the assassin could draw. She drove a knife, always carried, always accessible, through his wrist, pinning his hand to the nearest pillar. The man screamed. The crowd gasped. Security moved in immediately, but Chrisabel was already leaning close to the would-be killer. "Who sent you?" she demanded. Lee Sang-min said you were distracted by your pet." Chrisabel twisted the knife, and his scream cut off into a gurgle. "My pet? You mean Seoul's most dangerous man wearing my collar?" She smiled, cold and sharp. "Tell Lee Sang-min he just declared war, and wars with me don't end well." She pulled the knife free, letting security drag the bleeding man away. The crowd had backed away, giving her space, looking at her with naked fear. Good. Fear was power. Ji-hyun appeared at her side, his expression unreadable. "You just stabbed someone at a charity gala." "I stopped an assassination attempt. There's a difference." Chrisabel cleaned her knife with a napkin someone nervously offered. "Besides, everyone here knows what I am. Pretending otherwise is exhausting." They left shortly after, the gala ruined by violence that would be blamed on gang activity in tomorrow's news. In the car, Ji-hyun was quiet, processing. "What?" Chrisabel asked. 3 years ago, you would have hesitated, questioned whether killing was necessary. Now you don't even blink. 3 years ago, I was still pretending parts of the old me existed. Now I know better." She looked at him directly. "Does it bother you that I've become this?" "It terrifies me, and it's the only thing that makes sense." He reached for her hand. "Marry me." Chrisabel blinked. Of all the things she'd expected tonight, a proposal wasn't among them. "Why?" "Because we've built an empire together, because you're the only person who understands me completely, because I love you in whatever twisted way I'm capable of loving." His dark eyes held hers. "Because I want the world to know you're mine as much as I'm yours." "Terms," Chrisabel said immediately. "What?" "If we're doing this, I'm dictating terms. You don't get to propose and assume I'll just accept traditional vows." She pulled out her phone, opening a document she'd drafted months ago, prepared for this exact conversation. "Pre-nuptial agreement. Everything I've built remains solely mine. Our shared assets stay shared. But if we separate, you don't get to take what I've created." Ji-hyun read through the terms, and a slow smile spread across his face. "You've been planning this." "I plan everything, that's why I win." Chrisabel met his gaze. "So? Do you accept my terms, or do we continue as we are?" "I accept, on one condition." "Which is?" "The wedding is private. Just us, Sunung-men as witness. No spectacle. This is about us, not the empire." Chrisabel considered, then nodded. "Agreed. We'll marry at the Velvet Cage, where this all started." They married 2 weeks later in Vivian's private chambers, with Sunung-men and Vivian as witnesses. The vows were unconventional, promises to support each other's darkness, to never apologize for their monstrosity, to build power together until Seoul belonged entirely to them. When Ji-hyun slipped the wedding band onto Chrisabel's finger, platinum, elegant, paired with the collar he wore, Vivian smiled with complex emotion. "I've seen a lot in 28 years running this place," Vivian said afterward, "but I've never seen a dynamic quite like yours. Most power exchanges have a clear dominant and submissive. You two, you've created something entirely new." "Because we're not playing roles," Chrisabel replied. "We're being exactly who we are. Monsters who found completion in each other." The war with the Lee family came to a head 1 month after the wedding. Lee Sang-min had been gathering allies, building a coalition to challenge Chrisabel's expansion. He made the mistake of thinking she'd negotiate. Instead, she orchestrated a coordinated strike across all Lee operations in one night. By dawn, 17 Lee family members and associates were dead, their warehouses burned, their distribution networks demolished. Lee Sang-min himself was brought to the warehouse where Chrisabel had killed her first man 3 years ago. He knelt before her, bloodied and broken, while Ji-hyun watched from the shadows. "You killed my nephew," Lee gasped. "3 years ago. I've been planning this revenge." "You've been wasting 3 years on a fantasy," Chrisabel interrupted. She circled him slowly, knife in hand. "Did you really think you could challenge me? Me? The woman who conquered the unconquerable? You're nothing, just his whore who got lucky." Chrisabel drove the knife through his shoulder, and his scream echoed off concrete walls. "I'm the queen of this city, and you're just another corpse waiting to happen." She pulled the knife free, then looked at Ji-hyun. "Come here, I want you to watch this." Ji-hyun moved forward, and Chrisabel saw the hunger in his eyes, arousal from her violence, need sparked by her absolute control. 3 years, and he still responded to her darkness like an addict to their fix. "You're going to watch me kill him," Chrisabel said to Ji-hyun, "and then we're going to consummate this execution exactly where he falls. Do you understand?" "Yes." His voice was rough with desire. Chrisabel turned back to Lee, who was sobbing now, broken and begging. "Any last words? Please, my family—" "Your family chose war. War has consequences." She pressed the knife to his throat. "Send my regards to hell." The arterial spray was immediate. Lee collapsed, blood pooling beneath him, and Chrisabel stood over his body feeling absolutely nothing. No guilt, no remorse, not even satisfaction. Just cold acknowledgement that another obstacle had been removed. She looked at Ji-hyun, saw the dark need in his expression, and smiled. "Strip me." They made love over Lee's still warm corpse, violence and passion mixing until they were indistinguishable. Ji-hyun took her with desperate intensity while death surrounded them, and Chrisabel climaxed with her hands still bloody, her soul darker than it had ever been. This was who they were now. Not monsters pretending to be human, but apex predators who'd found their perfect hunting ground. Afterward, as they cleaned up and Sunungmen's team disposed of the body, Ji-hyun asked the question that had been building for 3 years. "Do you ever miss her? The woman you were before me?" Chrisabel thought about the desperate street survivor who'd walked into his office begging for a chance, the woman who'd signed that contract thinking she was just selling her body for survival, the person she'd been before pain and training and systematic destruction of every soft part of herself. "No," she said simply. "That woman was weak. She would have died on those streets within another year. I saved her by killing her. So you don't regret any of it? The transformation? The violence? Becoming this?" "Regret implies I had a choice. I didn't. It was evolve or die." Chrisabel looked at him directly. "The streets taught me to survive. You taught me to conquer. Together, we created something unstoppable." 3 weeks later, news reached them that Hana Park had committed suicide. Pills, alcohol, a note that blamed Chrisabel for destroying her life by succeeding where she'd failed. Sunungmen delivered the information with gravity, clearly expecting some emotional response. "The funeral is tomorrow. Her family is requesting—" "I won't be attending," Chrisabel said without looking up from her work. "Boss, she was—" "A cautionary tale, nothing more." Chrisabel signed documents authorizing expansion into Busan, her hand steady. "Send flowers, anonymous. That's more than she deserves." After Sunungmen left, Ji-hyun studied her face. "You feel nothing, even about this." "Should I?" "Hana made choices that destroyed her. I made different choices that elevated me. Her death doesn't change anything." "It should change something, feel like something." "But it doesn't. Because I'm not human anymore in the ways that count." Chrisabel met his eyes. "I'm the monster you created. The queen built from pain and violence. The woman who did the unthinkable." That phrase, the unthinkable, had become her title. People whispered it in fear and awe. The woman who'd accomplished what 10 others couldn't. The street survivor who'd conquered Seoul's most dangerous man and taken his empire. But they didn't understand the real unthinkable part. It wasn't surviving his size, wasn't enduring the training, wasn't even taking control of his organization. The truly unthinkable thing was that she'd stopped being a victim entirely and become something far more terrifying, a woman who wielded her own destruction as a weapon and built an empire on the bones of who she used to be. 5 years after walking into Ji-Hyun's office, desperate and hungry, Chrisabel stood on the rooftop of her building, looking down at Seoul spread beneath her like conquered territory. Ji-Hyun stood beside her, his collar catching the city lights, a visible symbol of ownership. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I'd failed?" Chrisabel asked. "If I'd been woman number 11 instead of the one who succeeded? Every day? What do you think would have happened to you? I would have given up, accepted that what I needed was impossible, lived alone and broken." Ji-Hyun's hand found hers. "You saved me by being strong enough to survive what I needed." "No." Chrisabel turned to face him. "I saved myself by using what you needed as a weapon. You were just the tool I used to transform." She kissed him then, tasting violence and victory and the dark completion they'd found in each other. When they pulled apart, Ji-Hyun asked one final question. "Was it worth it? Everything you gave up? Everything you became?" Chrisabel looked at the city that now bent to her will, the empire she'd built from desperation and pain, the power that made her more feared than any man in Seoul. "They said no woman could handle you," she said quietly. "They were right. I didn't handle you. I conquered you, broke you, rebuilt you as mine. I didn't survive the monster. I became one. A bigger, darker, more dangerous monster than you ever were." She smiled, cold and triumphant. "So yes, it was worth every drop of blood, every piece of my soul I sacrificed, every part of myself I killed to become this. Because power is the only thing that matters, and I have all of it now." Below them, Seoul glittered, a city ruled by a woman who'd started with nothing and taken everything through sheer ruthless will. Above them, stars watched without judgment as 2 monsters celebrated their empire. And somewhere in the city, people whispered the name Chrisabel Okonkwo with fear, respect, and the knowledge that challenging her was the last mistake anyone would make. The woman who'd done the unthinkable had become unstoppable, and she had no intention of ever stopping. If you want to see more dark stories like this one, hit that subscribe button. Drop a comment below. Would you have survived what Chrisabel endured? Could you have conquered like she did? And don't forget to like this video, part of a series exploring the darkest corners of power, desire, and transformation. Stay tuned for the next story.